He wasn't chosen by the gods. He became one. Over 4,000 years ago, a king stood at the peak of the world's first empire and made a decision no ruler had ever dared to make. He declared himself a god, and for a moment, it worked. His empire grew. His power became absolute. But then, something changed. The land began to dry. The cities began to fall. And a curse spread across the empire. A curse that would destroy everything. So was it arrogance? Or did he truly anger the gods? A little over 4,000 years ago, in the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, the world's first empire was rising. The Akkadian Empire, forged by Sargon the Great, built through conquest, held together by power, and inherited by his grandson, Naram-Sin, a ruler unlike any before him. Naram-Sin was not just a king. He was a conqueror, a commander who crushed rebellion after rebellion, a leader who pushed his empire farther than ever before. To his enemies, he was unstoppable. To his people, he was something more. And this is where everything begins to change. Naram-Sin had inherited an empire, but he had forged a legend. His armies had marched to the edges of the known world, from the shores of the Mediterranean to the mountains of Iran. He had crushed rebellions, expanded his borders, and secured trade routes that brought unprecedented wealth into his capital. He was the king of the four corners of the universe, a title no one had held before. But for a man who had conquered the world was no longer enough. At the absolute height of his power, Naram-Sin did something no Mesopotamian ruler had ever dared to do. He declared himself divine. This was not the customary deification granted to great kings after death, a place among the ancestors in the shadowy netherworld. Naram-Sin demanded to be worshipped as a living god while he was still alive. It was an act of supreme arrogance, a shattering of the sacred order. For centuries, kings were merely shepherds of the people, appointed by the gods to serve them on earth. Naram-Sin rejected the role of servant. He took the title, God of Akkad. On monuments and clay tablets across the empire, his name was now preceded by the star-shaped symbol reserved only for deities. His name was written as a god. This was more than just a title. It was a radical reinvention of kingship. His authority became absolute, his word as final as a divine decree. To question the king was no longer just treason, it was heresy, and across the empire, he was worshipped. Temples were built in his honor, prayers were spoken in his name. He was no longer a man ruling under the gods, he had become one of them. And for a time, this audacious strategy worked. It was a powerful tool of political control. The empire was stable. Trade flourished under the watchful eye of a divine king. His control was unmatched. The cult of the living king provided a unifying ideology for a diverse and fractious empire. It seemed Naram-Sin had not only conquered humanity, but divinity itself. But that moment of apotheosis, the instant a mortal man declared himself a god, was also the moment the seeds of his own destruction were sown. For in a world governed by cosmic balance, such hubris could not go unanswered. That decision may have changed everything, because in Mesopotamian belief, the universe was governed by a divine and fragile order. There was a line, a sacred boundary between gods and men, a covenant that maintained cosmic balance, and Naram-Sin, in his boundless ambition, had crossed it. And this is where things start to fall apart. At first, the signs were small, easily dismissed by a king who saw himself as divine. Whispers of unrest in the far-flung provinces. A quiet, simmering tension spreading across the empire like a fever. Then, distant rebellions flared up, challenging Akkadian authority, pressure building at the edges of the known world. But that wasn't the worst part. From the Zagros Mountains, a new threat emerged, the Gutians. Described in texts as a people who knew no order, who descended like a plague of locusts, something no army could fight. According to ancient legend, this was not a simple invasion. It was divine retribution. The gods had been angered. The story, known today as the Curse of Akkad, tells of a king who, faced with these mounting crises, defied the divine order. He demanded answers from the gods, seeking a sign, a reason for his empire's suffering, and for 7 years he received only silence. This silence, to a man who believed himself a god, was the ultimate insult. In a fit of hubris and rage, he blamed the gods themselves, specifically Enlil, the chief deity of the Mesopotamian pantheon. The legend claims he did the unthinkable. He marched his army on Nippur, Enlil's sacred city, and desecrated his temple. He tore down its walls, looted its treasures, and violated the most holy site in the land. It was an act of sacrilege so profound, it was said to have shaken the foundations of heaven and earth. And in response, Enlil unleashed his full fury, withdrawing his blessing from Akkad and unleashing the Gudians to lay waste to the land. The curse was now complete. Enraged, he turned against them, marching on sacred ground, attacking what was never meant to be touched, whether it truly happened or not. The message was clear. The gods would not tolerate it, and what came next was devastation. From the mountains came invaders, the Gutians, a force that swept into the weakened empire, bringing chaos, destruction, and fear. The land itself began to fail, crops stopped growing, rivers weakened, fields turned to dust, famine spread, and the empire started to collapse. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. Modern science reveals something unexpected. At the exact same time, a massive climate shift struck the region, a drought so severe, it lasted for centuries. Rain disappeared, agriculture failed, entire cities were abandoned. The empire didn't just fall from war, it collapsed from within. So what really happened? Was it a curse? Or was it something far more natural and just as destructive? In the end, the result was the same. The empire shattered. Naram-Sin's successors inherited a broken world. Rebellion spread. Control vanished. And the once powerful Akkadian Empire turned into dust. Its great capital lost to history. Its power gone. And its legacy reduced to myth. And yet, even as the dust of millennia settled over the ruins of Akkad, something of Naram-Sin refused to be buried. Something endured, carried not on the wind, but in the meticulous script of scribes and the hushed tones of storytellers. The story of Naram-Sin lived on. It was copied and recopied, studied in the scribal schools of Babylon and Assyria, becoming a foundational text for future kings. But it wasn't preserved as a simple chronicle of a great conqueror. It was transformed. It became a warning. A timeless parable of a ruler who reached too far, who in his quest for absolute power and divine status, believed he could become something more than mortal. And in doing so, sealed his own doom, and that of his empire. Because whether it was the direct, punitive wrath of the gods, as the ancient scribes believed, or the cold, unforgiving force of nature, a catastrophic climate event that no army could conquer. One fundamental truth remains, echoing from the shattered gates of Akkad to the corridors of power today. No empire is untouchable. No power is permanent. The systems we build, no matter how sophisticated or seemingly invincible, are fragile. They are subject to forces both internal and external, from the quiet erosion of trust to the sudden shock of environmental collapse. And when a man, a leader, an institution, tries to become a god, placing itself above the natural order, above accountability, above the very people it is meant to serve, the fall is not just possible, it is inevitable. So what do you think? The story of Naram-Sin presents us with a powerful dichotomy, a question that resonates through the ages. Did Naram-Sin's hubris, his defiance of the gods and his own mortality, truly bring destruction upon himself and his people? Or was he simply a capable, if arrogant, leader caught in the crosshairs of a climate disaster so immense that it was beyond anyone's control? A victim of circumstance, whose story was later reshaped to fit a moral narrative? Is this a tale of human arrogance, or a cautionary lesson about our vulnerability to the natural world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to continue exploring these fascinating intersections of myth, history, and science. Make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Because history isn't just a collection of facts about what happened long ago. It's a living library of human experience, filled with triumphs, tragedies, and warnings. It's the ongoing story of us, and it's what we're still trying to understand together.